Today, we will learn about one of the most striking passages in the New Testament, where the faith of a Roman centurion surprises even Jesus Christ himself. The story takes place in Capernaum, a small town on the shores of the Sea of Galilee. In this setting, Jesus teaches, heals, and transforms the lives of many people. But in the midst of all this activity, an unexpected figure appears, a Roman centurion. At that time, a centurion was an officer in the Roman army, with about 100 soldiers under his command. These men were a symbol of strength, authority, and power. But this particular centurion brought with him something even greater, an unshakable faith. He comes to Jesus with a plea that goes beyond what was expected. The centurion approaches and asks Jesus to heal his servant, who was very sick, on the verge of death. Here, we can see that this man not only had a great sense of compassion, but also believed deeply in the power of Jesus, which was something rare among the Romans. Upon hearing the request, Jesus immediately offered to go to the centurion's house to heal the servant. But what happened next was extraordinary. The centurion, with humility and reverence, said to Jesus, "Lord, I am not worthy that you should come under my roof, but just say the word, and my servant will be healed." This response left Jesus amazed. Throughout his life, Jesus witnessed many manifestations of faith, but the faith of this centurion touched his heart in a special way. With great admiration, Jesus turned to the crowd and said, "Truly, I say to you, not even in Israel have I found such great faith." The centurion knew that Jesus' power did not require meetings or physical presence. He believed that a word from Jesus was enough. And, in the face of such pure, trustworthy faith, Jesus declared the servant's healing right there, without even having to move. And at that very moment, the servant was healed. This passage teaches us a powerful lesson. We see that true faith is not based on conventions, positions, or appearances, but on a heart that confirms and trusts fully in the power of God. The centurion, even though he was a man of authority and influence, humbled himself and trusted in Jesus as no one else had done. This story of the centurion reveals to us that faith can manifest itself in the most unlikely places and in the hearts we least expect. Imagine a scene. A Roman official, part of a nation that many Jews considered oppressive, who possessed authority, position, and wealth. He could easily ignore Jewish traditions or even look down on Jesus, an itinerant rabbi. But instead, he sees in Jesus something that transcends his own understanding and earthly power. He sees in Jesus divine authority. This moment is of great beauty because Jesus, the Son of God, does not care about the social position, nationality, or background of this man. Jesus sees the sincere heart of the centurion. He does not reject the official's request, even though he knows that for many, the Roman was a foreigner or even an enemy. This shows us that God's mercy is always available to those who seek the truth, regardless of where they came from or who they are. It is as if the centurion was saying to everyone, "I trust him more than the resources I have, more than the doctors, more than the weapons and the men under my command." By asking for just one word, he declares something powerful, that Jesus is Lord not only of life and death, but of all creation, visible and invisible. Now imagine the impact of this act on those around him. Many of those who followed Jesus were from the Jewish people, waiting for the Messiah, but saw Jesus only as a prophet or healer. And yet, in front of everyone, a foreign man shows a faith that surpasses even the expectations of the chosen people themselves. With this, Jesus teaches us that faith is not a matter of tradition or inheritance, but of true and conscious surrender to the power of God. And what happens next? Jesus not only heals the servant, but also makes this moment an eternal lesson, a reminder that sincere faith moves the heart of God. He heals the centurion's servant from a distance, demonstrating that God's power knows no boundaries and that healing, miracles, can happen where we least expect it. This moment, so simple and yet so profound, is a reminder that our faith does not need many rituals or appearances. God is moved by humility and the certainty that He is capable of anything. The The centurion's trust shows that God looks at the interior, at the heart that opens and believes. Thus, this passage invites us to reflect. What is true faith? Faith is casting ourselves, as the centurion did, in complete trust that a single word from Jesus is enough to transform the impossible into reality. So, what can we hope to learn from this centurion, who with humility and trust placed something so precious in the hands of Jesus? And may each of us also seek a faith like this, one that surprises, that touches God's heart, and that brings us closer to Him. When we observe the story of the centurion, we understand that true faith is a total surrender, an act of trust in which we set aside our own strength and depend completely on God. The centurion, even though he was a man of great authority, recognized that his strength and power had limits in the face of his servant's weakness. And he, with humility, sought in Jesus what the world could not offer. There is an incomparable beauty in the centurion's faith. He did not ask Jesus to perform miracles with his own eyes. He did not ask for proof or signs. He knew that Jesus could act without being physically present, with just a word, because Jesus' authority transcended space and time. This absolute trust is what touched Jesus' heart. Jesus, who always taught about faith, about the power of believing without seeing, sees in this man a living example of what he taught so much. The centurion became a model of faith for all of us, demonstrating that faith is not limited to what we see or what we can control. It is, above all, a profound certainty that God was there in ways that go beyond our understanding. It is also interesting to note that, at that moment, Jesus not only extols the centurion's faith, but sets him up as an example for the Israelites themselves. He, a Roman, someone considered a foreigner and distant from the tradition of Israel, becomes an example of faith for all the people. This detail teaches us something profound. God does not see the boundaries that we humans place. He looks at faith at the heart and not at position, culture, or origins. When Jesus says that he did not find such faith even in Israel, he reveals that faith is not a matter of inheritance or tradition, but of decision. The centurion made a bold decision, confirming Jesus' absolute power, even though he was from another culture, from another reality. He dared to believe. This example challenges us to evaluate our own faith. Will we trust Jesus in this way? Will we be able to say, "Lord, just say the word," when faced with difficulties? Or do we want to control every situation, resolve everything with our own strength? The centurion teaches us that true faith is surrender. It is understanding that Jesus' power goes beyond what we can see or control. And this surrender, this trust that the centurion showed, brought an immediate response from Jesus. The servant was healed. This miracle is a symbol of the healing that faith brings to our lives, because where there is faith, there is the presence and action of God. May we hope, like the centurion, to trust Jesus completely, without reservations, without conditions. May our faith also be a faith that surprises, a faith that moves mountains, that touches the heart of God. For he always responds to the heart that approaches him with humility, trust, and sincerity. In addition to teaching us about faith, the Roman centurion provides us with an example of rare humility. In his position, he could have ordered his soldiers to go to Jesus. He could have demanded a cure based on his power or wealth. However, he chooses humility, allowing that before Jesus, he was nothing more than a man in need of mercy. This teaches us that true faith does not seek power or recognition. It bows down and places all trust in the hands of God. By saying, "I am not worthy that you should come under my roof," the centurion reveals to us something even deeper, that he understands the greatness of Jesus. He recognized that Jesus was not just a healer, but the very Son of God, someone worthy of reverence and enthusiasm. And so he approaches him with respect, with a humble heart thirsting for healing. And when Jesus sees this kind of faith, a faith accompanied by sincere humility, he is moved. He marvels at this man who, even without having grown up in Jewish culture, not even in the traditions of the people of Israel, does he understand the divine power of Jesus in a way that many, even living close to Jesus, cannot understand. The centurion's attitude makes us reflect on how we approach God in our moments of need. Are we, like him, ready to consider our smallness and the greatness of Jesus? Or are we trying to solve everything with our own strength, seeking God only as a last resort? The centurion's faith challenges us to reverse this order. He sought Jesus before anything else, and not after exhausting all alternatives. He placed his hope in the power of God from the beginning. This passage also shows us that God honors sincere faith, no matter where it comes from. Jesus does not question the centurion's past, nor does he care about the fact that he was a Roman, his background, or his failures. For Jesus, what matters is a humble and trusting heart before him. And this fills us with hope because it means that God does not see us as the world sees us. He does not look at our mistakes, our origins, or our human limitations. He sees our hearts, our willingness to believe. This story invites us to live a warm and humble faith, a faith that does not require signs or proof. We can say like the centurion, "Lord, I believe that one word from you is enough." If we truly believe, if we are humble in our search, Jesus will always respond, just as he responded to the centurion. At the end of this story, perhaps we can ask ourselves, in what areas of my life do I need to have a firmer faith, a faith without reservations? Where do I still try to hold back on decisions instead of trusting in the power of Jesus? May we let go of our limitations, entrust everything to God's care, and let him see the impossible in us. So, just as the centurion had faith in the healing of his servant, may we also have faith that God can heal our wounds, our doubts, and our fears. Because, as Jesus taught us, for those who believe, all things are possible. This is the powerful message of the centurion and the encounter with Jesus, a faith that reminds us that, regardless of where we come from, what we have done, or who we are, we can approach God with trust and humility. And he will always be ready to listen to us and answer us. So, at the end of this reflection, here is an invitation. Let us open our hearts and ask Jesus to strengthen our faith so that, like the centurion, we can believe without seeing, trust without demanding proof, and surrender completely to God's will. May this story inspire all of us to seek a faith that transforms, that heals, and that brings us even closer to the love of Jesus. If this message brought you light and hope, please like it and share it with someone who needs to hear this word today. And remember, Jesus sees the heart that believes. Until the next video, and may God bless your life.